Hey, runners. What if you suddenly lost that last 5 to 10 pounds that you've been trying to lose for years? What if you were able to switch your metabolism from carb craving to fat burning in just 2 weeks? Well, I did it, and you can too. Listen in to discover how. Welcome to the Forever Runner podcast. I'm your host, Herb the Forever Runner, and I'm excited to bring back Coach Darcy Hawxhurst, the creator of the Vibrant Woman community. Today, we're going to talk about her free annual carb challenge event. So, so Darcy, last time we talked was like back in April's, and I'll add a link to that down in the show notes. But so what's been going on since then?
Well, I'll be really honest. What has been going on since then? I had a tree hit my house in June,
Oh,
and seriously, and it took out half the house. So we lived in a hotel for part of the summer. We lived in a hotel for most of the summer because my daughter graduated college. We had a European celebration adventure planned, and then this thing happened to the house. And the reason I'm telling you that is because I learned a whole lot about my own stability in my health habits, right? When I hit this major bump in my life. And I think that this is true of so many people. I hear from other people that, oh, the reason I can't eat well, the reason I can't exercise, the reason I can't get enough sleep, the reason that I'm not really taking good care of my body and my brain is because of, and then it's, insert, right? Whatever's happening in my external world. For me, because a tree hit my house. I can't, don't expect me to eat foods that work for my body this week. A tree hit my house. And I'm making a little fun of myself, and I'm making a little fun, of the other people who we tend to let ourselves off the hook. But what we're really, really doing there is saying that we don't have any power. We don't have any control, and nothing is farther from the truth. Right? I don't have control over which way the wind blows or how hard it blows or how old that tree was. I don't have any control over what insurance companies decide or, I don't have control over any of those things. But what I do have control over at the end of the day, every day, is a choice about what I actually put into my body. There might sometimes be two bad choices there, but we do always have the choice. And I just want to also say this to let people off the hook a little bit, because if you hang around with me or with you very long, you know that we're going to advocate for, please do the right thing. Please eat healthy foods. Please eat a variety of foods. Please get your protein. Please get outside today, right? So we want everybody to do this. And I hit a place in my life where I realized, gosh, there's a lot of chaos right now. And it was a huge challenge to stay consistent. And so that you asked, that's what's been going on. But I learned so much from that time. I learned about what my real triggers are. I did really well for a while, and then it was like the first chocolate bar that I had to treat myself. And it was a healthy chocolate bar, y'all. It was a
of
good one. It
course.
was it was expensive. It was dark chocolate. It was very little sugar. But it was incredible to me how quickly that slippery slope became very steep, because that one chocolate disrupt your bacteria balance in your gut biome, right? That imbalance of bad bacteria that need sugar to survive are going to put up a call for more. That's the craving to do it again the next day, right? And so it really becomes this thing that, luckily, I know what I know. And I'm able to course correct. But this carb challenge that I'm hosting is as much for you as it is for me. So that I can, again, take this time to just invite my body back into a fat burning metabolism, invite my brain back into a state where it's not inflamed, right? And my whole system back into a place where I won't, again, have as much inflammation. We can talk about the benefits. There are many, 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 many benefits of understanding your carb tolerance, but there's only really, in my experience, one way to get there. And it's through lowering your carbs enough through an experience like this carb challenge that we can understand. We can let our bodies really be free of what we've been doing to them and look at how much better we can feel. A lot of us just have no idea how good your body was actually meant to feel on the daily. And I think this is a beautiful invitation to get a taste of that. And 2 weeks is not going to fix all our problems or solve all our, on the 16th day, you still have to decide what you're going to eat. But you are going to have so much more perspective about making those choices. So that's why I do this. I just heard from people over the years how powerful it is. I have lived that experience myself ever since the first time I did my first 2-week carb test, created by my friend and mentor, my coach, Dr. Phil Maffetone. And it's life-changing. So it's really life-changing.
Yeah, I had the same experience, just like most runners out there. I was on the bagel and banana before you go for your run because otherwise you're going to die. Yeah, yeah, you had to have that fuel going all the time, and that meant every day, rather whether you're running or not. And um, it wasn't until I found Dr. Phil Maffetone, and he's pretty blunt about it. Why would you do that? And so I followed his 2-week test, and it was so amazing how quickly your metabolism can totally switch over. And I went from craving, just craving food, where I just constantly I was eating 5 times a day, and then all of a sudden, just after a 2-week time period, suddenly I didn't have those hunger urges anymore, and I kind of ate when I felt like I should eat instead of on any prescribed schedule. I wasn't driven either by cravings or a specific time for lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and I didn't die. And the benefit of your body utilizing more of your fat stores for fuel is that if you're doing uh, low heart rate training, zone 2 style training, that's your major fuel source. So the two work together very well. So not only are you eating better, you're creating a better metabolism, but you're also improving your endurance and your running ability. So yeah, I was so surprised that uh, just after 2 weeks, it was just a huge mind shift.
It is. You mentioned a couple of things there that I think are so important to talk about a little bit more. You said it's amazing how fast your body can shift, right? Metabolic states from being a sugar burning, sugar dependent metabolism, meaning the cells require, well, let's talk about this for a minute. The cells require glucose for fuel. That's the body's, that enough of all cell to a certain degree. But it really is a matter of ratio, because the preferred and most stable fuel for most cells of the body, the 80% of the cells that we want to call the aerobic system of the body, right? The slow twitch muscle fibers, right? And truly the fuel for a muscle cell is oxygen, right? But we want to talk about, are you sugar burning, you fat burning? So just to break that down for a minute, every cell requires some glucose, but just a little. And it's not that efficient. Like you just said, you would crave if you start your day with a banana and a glass of orange juice and a piece of toast or a bagel or a muffin or, heaven forbid, a donut, a waffle with literal sugar poured all over the top of it. What you are doing is providing a very short-term, very unreliable amount of fuel, and actually too much of it. And so what happens is the body responds by saying, well, we can only use a little bit of this glucose. And actually, if you've been doing that since you were, well, for me, ever since I could walk, right? I was raised on Cocoa Puffs. No fault to anybody who loved and cared for me. They didn't know this then. They didn't understand it. We've come through, if you look historically at the advent of junk foods, they started out as convenience foods. You look at it now, it's an entire industry that is very well defended with lobbyists and propaganda. And I mean, there's that whole thing. So no wonder so many people are confused and they think, why not just eat a donut for breakfast? Why not, buy a box of cereal? But what you're doing is bringing in, number one, a very, very inefficient fuel source. Like you said, you're going to be hungry again in a half an hour, maybe an hour, maybe 2 hours, but it's going to happen quickly, And here's what's happening. We take in all of that food, and whether it tastes sweet or not, so donuts are obviously sugar. Pretzels are not obviously sugar, though they are. Same with potatoes, the same with a piece of bread, the same with crackers. The same with a lot of those breakfast cereals, whether they taste sweet or not, and they do have sugar added. Our palates are so messed up. But so we bring that food in, and it turns to glucose immediately in the bloodstream because it's such a refined carbohydrate dense food. That's what carbs do. They turn to sugar in the bloodstream. And if you've done this over your lifetime, see, a little glucose could get in originally, but the body knows. The body knows this is not what I need. It's over the amount that I can metabolize. And so the cells become insulin resistant, and they will no longer let the insulin in. Let's talk about insulin. When that glucose hits your bloodstream, okay, from the bowl of cereal or the donut or the banana and orange juice, whatever it is, do some of those foods have nutrients in them? Some of them do. Are some of those foods, I call them food-like products, are they pretty nutrient deficient? Most of them are, right? So we think we're eating food. We're not really, we're not eating for the reason nature intended us to eat because we're not getting anything out of it. But what we do get out of it is I call it a carb bomb, and it's just a whole rush of glucose into that bloodstream. And so the only way glucose can get into a cell is if it has a delivery boy. And that delivery boy is, and excuse me for gendering that, there could be delivery girls too, but the point is there's a delivery person, right? So the metaphor here is your UPS driver, who we all get really excited when we see the UPS driver because we want that package. We're excited for it. We want to take that in. So when insulin comes along to be the delivery person, the delivery cell, no, I'm going to mess all this up, but you know what I'm saying. The delivery agent, it's an agent of delivery, takes the glucose, puts it in its backpack, goes up to the cell, knocks on the door, says, I have something you want and need. Here's your glucose. Well, if that UPS driver came every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes of every day of your life, you would stop answering the door. And this is what has happened. We become insulin resistant. It is one way that the body tries to protect itself from an overload of glucose. So it can no longer even get into the cell, which is why you feel hungry again. And sometimes that hunger is in your stomach. My stomach is empty. More often than not, that hungry is really hangry. It's a neurological sign. People get loopy and irritated and angry. They get frustrated. They get tired. They lose their focus. We have an entire generation of people running around claiming to have late diagnosed ADHD when what they have is a poor sugar-dependent metabolism that is impacting their brain health. So what we're eating is doing this to our bodies and our brain. We could talk more about that later. I want to come back to the story about insulin, trying to get the glucose into the cell. Not much is going to get in. That's why you're tired and lethargic. But the glucose is still there. And glucose is a toxin. So what the body, again, wants to do something to protect itself. So insulin is still going to do its job. It is going to come out and take all of that glucose and put it in a backpack. And evolution has helped to shape this response. This is an evolutionary response. The body is always trying to find balance and to survive and to thrive. And in our modern world, with this abundance of nutrient deficient, carbohydrate dense, food like products, this is what the body just did to figure out what to glucose. It will store that. Insulin will convert the glucose into fat, and it'll tuck some away into our muscle cells as glycogen. And that's what you need, right? At the end of a long run, you're going to be glad you got a few glycogen stores in there. It will tuck some into the liver as glycogen and save that for later. That can be pulled out. That's like emergency glucose. Like we can remake that in a minute and use it if we have to. And where it might have to be used, let's talk about this. The aerobic system of the body, when you said a minute ago so brilliantly, you said, well, it's amazing how fast the body can shift gears, metabolic gears, to stop doing that burning sugar thing and burn fat. The reason that it can do that pretty darn quickly is because that's the factory setting. It's easy to restore to factory setting, at least in the beginning. If you do the carb test every weekend to reset after your weeks of beer pizza, or what I'm saying, like we don't want to abuse this. We want to understand when we do that carb test and we lower carbs and we stop seeing this high glucose amount and then the insulin response that happens, we get to see what the body would look like under its factory settings. You're meant to thrive. You're meant to have unlimited energy. You're meant to wake up in the morning as the sun, comes over the trees in the horizon. Like you're meant to be well. And if you're not, it's because you're having these metabolic issues based on the way that we're taught it's normal to live in the modern world. And from the body's perspective, it's just there's nothing normal about it. So when you look at what insulin does, then it's figured out, well, we can convert some of this really toxic, dangerous glucose. If we leave this glucose to circulate, it's going to tear apart, right? So we know those are the symptoms of diabetes. It will tear apart the lining of your blood vessel. It will damage neurons and dendrites. It will damage organ system. It will prevent healing. Like that excess glucose circulating in your bloodstream cannot happen. And what the body does to protect itself is it lets the insulin come and convert it to fat and store the fat. Now, evolutionarily, that was a really sensible adaptation. So I just want to point out the brilliant genius of our bodies, of our human bodies. What an exquisitely powerful idea. Store it as fat. Why? Well, because the original factory settings on your body were to burn that fat. So early humans, this time of year, we'd be eating those root vegetables. We would be stocking up. We'd be eating some excess carbs. We wouldn't be eating Fruit Loops, right? We'd be eating squash and sweet potatoes and some legumes, the things that we could grow, hunt, gather, forage for, tubers. We'd be eating those starchy things to get a little excess fat stored so that if we hit famine, we've got fat to burn. And that would have worked because we would not have eaten so far over our carb tolerance for so long to destroy the body's ability and memory of how to burn fat. But when you fast forward into the modern world, and we've got fat stored in between our organs, and we've got fat stored in that the common muffin top, the belly fat, that's the first easiest place to put it. Next easiest place on women is their backside, and for all people, it's these cheeks. You can tell, carb cheeks, you can tell what people are eating by looking at their faces. So we're going to store fat. For women, we're going to store it in the breast, which is full of, that's also going to trigger a lot of estrogen production. So we knock off our hormone balance. We create some stress. Fat stores toxins as well. So we don't detox as well. Now we're inflamed. Now that, so the cascade of the body trying to adapt to a really bad situation translates as a long list of symptoms. That if you don't notice in the early stages, the sleepiness after meals, the bloating in your belly, eventually, the hormone imbalance, the moodiness and irritability, the cravings, and then it can become more serious, and more serious and more serious until we're at end stage, what Dr. Maffetone called stage 3 of CI, carbohydrate intolerance, are the big 3 or 4 now of metabolic disease markers. And that's heart disease, diabetes, sorry, what am I missing? Oh, and it goes into the brain now is what I'm saying. They're recognizing that Alzheimer's and dementia are simply nothing but type 3 diabetes. In other words, it's the same root problem.
Yeah, I think it's, if people are wondering, well, I don't know, I'm a runner, I'm pretty healthy, things are going good right now. Now, you were talking about the 3 different stages of carbohydrate intolerance, and there's symptoms that kind of go along with those. And the group we really need to talk about are those people who are in stage one
Right.
who say, well, I'm pretty healthy. I haven't been sick in 2 years, blah, blah, blah. Uh, but I'm still carrying around this 5 to 10 pounds. Um, no matter how hard I run or how much I restrict food, diet, it just doesn't go away. And yeah, I'm hungry all the time. And then after lunch, I fall asleep at work,
Well,
the just kind of blah, 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 blah. It
and
just
here's
kind of goes
why.
on. And um, I think if people find themselves where, yeah, I do some of those things, it's really important to cut it off now
Mm.
and switch things over because if you continue on this path, you you're going to slowly start going into other stages that are more uh they're worse, and which is the big problem that we have nowadays with chronic diseases in the older population is because if you don't nip this stuff in the bud, it's going to grow on you and it'll get you later on, even if you're already in your 50s, 60s, or 70s. So,
For sure.
yeah.
Well, and here's why. What I love what you said is that last 5 to 10 pounds, that little ring around our belly that, we just wish wasn't there. Um, Number one, I ask women particularly, men too, but I ask the women that I work with to let themselves off the hook just a little bit because uh, our society is so hard on women and their body shape and what that means and all of that. So that stress, the stress of that kind of pressure and that thinking, that negative thinking and shame about it can make it harder, right, to burn the fat. But there's the reason why that is still there is because you're running most likely at a heart rate intensity that has you burning sugar, which means you're going to crave sugar, which means you're going to eat sugar. But if you already have some insulin resistance, your body is going to take the excess sugar and store it as fat. And you can run all day and all night. But if you run at an intensity that you're burning sugar, that will stay right there. You have to switch yourself to burning fat. And what does that mean? Well, it means number one, slowing down into an aerobic heart rate zone where your body can naturally, where the aerobic system is going to be active. And the preferred fuel source, the factory setting for those aerobic cells is fat. It wants to burn fat. But you have to also match this with, and I was about to say, your carb tolerance. And when I say that, I can hear some people hearing me say low carb. And I just want to come and put a little clarity to this situation and say, can we please stop with the high carb, low carb wars? Let's do what's sensible. I don't even call my program a low carb program. I say, find your body's carbohydrate tolerance and live within it. For me, that does translate as pretty low carb, comparatively speaking. But high or low are just comparative things. And so, what is your body's carbohydrate tolerance is the real question we have to ask. Because, like we just said, the story of the cell and insulin and fat storage and the story of the running, like those are the same story. That's the body trying to get back to its factory settings, which, by the way, when you're burning fat, you can run farther and faster because number one, you're lighter and more efficient. The reason you're more efficient is because that's your brain telling your proprioception, your balance, your agility, your coordination, all of that is run from your brain. And your brain, there are some parts of the brain that are not keto adaptive. They cannot switch to fat burning like the body's aerobic cells can. And those parts of the brain need a slow, small, steady stream of glucose available. But when your body cells are sugar dependent and you're running hard and burning his sugar and feeling like you're going to crash if you don't eat another donut or bagel or, whatever to fill that gap, guess who's starving?
Yeah,
Your brain for health. Yeah. So And that's how I came to this work. I rehabbed my kiddo's brain injury. Um, and everybody, I love to talk about that. We won't go into all the details here, but I just want to say, do not underestimate the impact of um, proper exercise at the right heart rate and this nutrition piece for the development and health and longevity of your brain, because you need it. The whole lifespan, we need it. And we have normalized aging as degenerating, and it does not have to be the same. Speaking of Phil Maffetone, what he said not that long ago, what he said to me is, you should have the best brain on the day that you die.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So,
So what would it
well,
take to do that, right? What would it take to do that? What do we have to do?
well, yeah. So why don't you just kind of do a brief overview of what the 2-week test actually entails? Because it's not this. Uh, it is pretty dramatic, but it's not like some starvation thing that you have to do or anything like that. So, can you kind of just go through quickly the process, the highlights of the process of what someone would do if they signed up for this?
Yeah. Thank you for always keeping me on track. I love it. Absolutely. So it's a 2-week test. I teach it very much the way that Phil taught it to me and that he teaches on his other platforms. The 2 weeks is for a reason. And I will say, for some of us, 2 weeks may not be quite enough, depending on sort of how resistant our sugar dependent metabolism is. Some folks can take a little longer. So I just want to put that caveat out there. But the 2 weeks is for a reason. It's because we know that that's about how long it takes in the absence of excess levels of glucose. Therefore, no strong insulin response. We know that's about how long it takes for the body to heal enough and, again, restore itself to the factory settings of a fat burning metabolism. So again, I just want to point out, like, this is meant to be a really informative experiment for you to feel what your body could be like, what it's like when when it's really thriving, when everything's happening the way that it should be. And it's not meant to be a detox or a way to lose weight, because a lot of people do. A lot of people will lose weight. And the reason is we shift into fat burning. So what happens is you have to restrict, and no, it is not a diet and it's not a cleanse necessarily, though you most likely will lose weight and you most likely will feel better and you will be able to turn on your detoxing. You know, the detox happens much more quickly when we are not sugar dependent. There's a lot of reasons for that. But this is not meant to be restrictive. And the way that I teach it, it's really taught to say, yes, we're going to take away these things because we want to take away the insulin response. We want to actually take away this sort of the trigger happy thing that's happening around glucose. So we're going to make a list. There's a yes and a no list. Look at all the no foods and all that they are. They're things that have sugar in them or things that turn immediately to sugar in the bloodstream. And I'll just give you a quick lowdown. So it's going to be fruit. It's going to be anything with sugar in it. So anything boxed or bagged with sugar in it, the natural sugars of the fruit. And again, anything else that doesn't necessarily taste sweet, but that's made from refined flour products or any of the the refined flour products are things like bread, crackers, pretzels, chips, and really, folks, those are the junk foods. I mean, one of the reasons that you get such a good outcome from this is because you give up junk food for 2 weeks and you could just be like what we were doing to ourselves when we were eating that way. But then it's also, see, where was I? It's also the starchy vegetables. So things like, are potatoes healthy? I mean, they grow in the ground and they do have nutrients in them. They also have a carb bomb in them. There's a lot of starch there. So we take the most starchy vegetables like corn, and actually corn's not a vegetable. Corn is a grain. We take out grains, legumes, and the real starchy vegetables. And so so some people are going, well, wait a minute. You said this wasn't restrictive. That's that I eat. What am I supposed to eat? Well, this is where I come in and say, look, there are so many other foods to eat. we're really just restricting a few categories of food. What's left? Well, what's left are all of the natural unprocessed proteins, which is my favorite food group. You can eat the unprocessed meat from any animal that you can find. You can eat the proteins of plants if you tolerate them. So it's meat, it's nuts, it's seeds if you tolerate them. I don't. I don't tolerate plant protein. So you'll hear me talk about meat a lot because that's where I get my protein. Um, it's vegetables. It's the non-starchy vegetables. And so that's people say, I can hear it now. I can hear you saying, so salad? You just want me to eat meat and salad? Well, yes, but I want you to be more excited about it than that. And to help you get more excited about it, let me explain. There are so many non-starchy vegetables. They come in a rainbow of colors. They each have a different nutrient profile that your body needs for some of its processes. And it can be so fun to eat natural foods that are colorful and beautiful. It also leaves us with the fats. And it turns out that if we want to jumpstart a fat burning metabolism, we have got to bring some fat in. Your brain is made of more than 65% fat. I think the most recent study I showed is that it's probably, they're looking at a number around 70 now, 70% fat in your brain. Where does your brain get the raw material to make neurotransmitters and, myelinated axons? And, where does that come from? It's got to be brought in. So you get to eat fat. Yes, you get to eat fat. It was never fat that made you fat, right? It was a sugar-dependent metabolism storing fat that made you fat. And what gets stored as fat are the excess carbs. Fat actually can be burned. It can be digested and burned very, very well by a healthy body. So you get to eat, again, the nuts, the seeds, those have fat in them. You get to eat avocados. You get to eat coconut. You get to eat your olives. You get to eat cheese if you tolerate dairy. There's so much to eat during the 2-week carb challenge. And in fact, I would argue there's way more to discover about delicious foods that you may not have really been eating before than there is to grieve over the stuff we're going to give up. And depending on how you feel during the carb test and how your body responds, how much weight you've lost, how many inches you've lost. Inches is more important than mass, than your scale number is your tape measure number. So we want to measure around our waist. And in fact, I'll invite people to do that now. If you grab a tape measure and measure around at your belly button, your waist, that number compared to your height should be less than half. Okay. So if we have, that's the ratio that tells us this fat storage pattern is really problematic. You are eating over your carb tolerance and you would benefit by changing that. So we just start. There's no taper down. We all get prepared. What I do when people sign up is the email automatically goes out to you with an article to understand more. I think the people who tend to do the best at this and to really use it as a way to transform their lives long term, they're the people who continue to learn about it. You have to compare what you're learning out there with how your body is responding, right? And one of the best ways to understand what's happening when you feel a certain way is to have that solid foundation. For example, there's going to be a few of us that get a headache. Right somewhere between day 2 and 4, because the brain is going to say, where's all the glucose that I've been dependent on? Where is it? You better give me some. So some people are going to get cranky. And we're going to eat something on the yes list and keep going because, again, what that means is the body is running out of glycogen stores and it's on the verge then of shifting into a fat burning metabolism. It's on the verge of stepping into that factory setting and restoring the fat burning metabolism that would have been there otherwise had we not kind of messed it up, with our processed food diet all along. So.
Yeah. And the best part about this, so I read Dr. Phil's book and just followed what the book said, but I didn't have anyone I could ask questions or none of my friends wanted to do any, wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So it wasn't like, there were 2 or 3 of us doing it together sort of thing way back when I did it. But the cool thing about this challenge is you're with a group of people and you've got someone you can ask questions and bounce things off of. through the process, so that you're supported, and and that's huge. And it's so if you feel like, I'm not feeling good, is that normal or what I should do? And you have Dorsey, you can ask and she can let you know. She says, years of experience doing this, and your ability to be successful is going to be very, very high.
Oh, I so agree. I'm so happy you named that because I was like you. I did it, um, yeah, alone basically, and did it a couple of times, right? Because after my first 2-week carb test, what did I do? Is I went and I made a pan of brownies and ate the whole thing. Right? I'm like, I'm done with it. I was done with it. I felt so good. It was awesome. I just went right back. And so and some people will do that, and that's okay. So you do it again, right? So sometimes learning is not a smooth linear process necessarily. Um, but right, I'm gonna be there. So I didn't really have an understanding. I think the hardest part for me, Herb, was understanding what my results meant because I lost inches and sizes and I mean, I was like a new person at the end of that 2 weeks. And had I known better, I probably would have kept going. It wouldn't have taken me another couple of years to really figure out what is my carb tolerance and, what are to resolve some of these symptoms, right? Um, but yeah, no, I'm going to be there to say, let me help you understand the way your body responds, the better your results are, what that really tells us about you and your carb tolerance, and what are the most sensible ways to move forward. How do you want to reintroduce them? What order should you reintroduce them in? How much should you have and how soon? And how to really do that consciously so that you're noticing, right? You're noticing when your symptoms come back and you understand what that means. And what I say to people, you're never going to be perfect. Like you will at some point go over your carb tolerance again, but you'll never do it and not understand.
You know,
That's a whole other thing. Yeah.
so so when are you going to do this, and how do people sign up?
Yep. We're going to start December 1st. Sign up is open now. So I'll share a link with you and you can share it with your community as soon as you register. So you have to share your email with me to register. That will put you on the list internally in my system. It will automatically make sure that you get an email to your inbox. So go check your inbox, and that first email is going to have all of the details. We'll start December 1st. It is a 2-week test. I'm going to go live with you for 6 calls for question and answer. I also send out emails to check in with people and provide little bits of information. But that first email you get is going to be some schedule. It will have an article for you to read. It will have the list of yes and no foods. It'll have a little recipe guide with it so that, we have some ideas. People say, well, if I can't eat this, what should I eat? And I've got some ideas for you. So you get that welcome kit and everything you need to set yourself and your pantry and perhaps your people, right? There might be some people you need to explain a few things to. For these 2 weeks, this is what I'm focusing on, and this is what I'm doing, and this is why. And I'm asking for your support in these ways. So I want you to get yourself set up for success. And yes, then we will have some calls where you can come together. You can bring your questions. I will, I'm there for my live coaching with you, bringing all of my expertise, but you get to meet the community of other people. You get to hear, we share recipes. You get to hear what works for them, what doesn't work for them. We get to learn from each other. And I think most importantly, we get to learn not only about our own beautiful bodies, but about just this human journey in a human body overall. We're going to see so many commonalities with each other, and we're going to not feel alone with it.
Yeah, that's just fantastic to have that level of support and community. And best of all, it's free. So
Absolutely free. Yep.
yeah, uh, I I would I just highly recommend anyone who feels that they need to make a change about their nutrition, diet, lifestyle, and if you really want to experience, it's hard to explain the difference, the before and the after. Yeah, my pants got loose and I had to get new pants, but what not being a slave to food is such a huge thing where you're just not thinking about food all the time, and uh, it, you're eating whole foods, and it is very enjoyable. and it's sustainable because you're not going on some weird, strict diet. Um, you're finding out what works for you and what doesn't. So some of these items that are not part of the 2-week test, you can bring them back into your life, and some of them might work for you, some of them might not, but you'll be able to tell. And it's just a very natural, sustainable way of eating and living the rest of your life. And it, with support, it only takes a couple weeks, and you're there.
Yeah, that's right. That's beautifully said. Um, I'll just add this one thing. I think you're right. I think for me, the weight loss, the improved cholesterol numbers, hormone balance, better sleep. For my daughter, it means no seizures. I mean, the results they speak for themselves and they're astounding. And I think what you just said might be the most impactful one for me as well. There's a freedom here, a freedom from being obsessed with food cravings. And that's one thing that people will throw up as an obstacle for themselves. So if you're out there and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm such a chocolate addict, I could never do that. That's the chocolate addiction talking, actually. And you just have no idea sort of the sense of freedom that's waiting for you on the other side of this. So
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
So everyone, we'll put the links to sign up in the description or the show notes. I expect a lot of you to show up. Let Darcy know that you came from here, so she'll be nice to you.
Yeah, that's right. We'll come up with a special gift for all the Forever Runner crowd.
There
That
we
you're
go.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a special gift. But yeah, so thanks for hanging with us. Sign up and change your metabolism, and we'll see you next time. See you guys.